most people will have a general idea of what a construction project manager does, from inception of the project, including having some input into pricing of the project, the relevant trades that will be involved in the project, then planning how the construction will commence, important stages, critical points of the project. Then you have daily input into how the construction proceeds on site.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Constructing Mindsets. I'm your host, Vincent Saunders. This is all about changing the way we talk about the construction industry. Whether you're on the tools or supporting others behind the scene, we are hearing from the people who are shining their light and making a difference. Thanks for joining us. Let's get into the episode. Daniel Eason, how are you going?
Good, thanks.
I thought I'd have you on tonight to talk through sort of your career. You're working in the development manager space as well, but I thought it'd be quite interesting to chat through your experience as a project manager and a quantity surveyor, and sort of how you sort of progressed through your career and sort of kind of crossed over from two different sort of sides of the construction business. At the moment, you're a development manager, but I know you as a project manager. I thought it would be quite cool just to, with your experience in both fields, sort of dive into like the two different, maybe some of the different skills you might need, also some of the challenges with both roles, and then also maybe just working, I know you work in the region, and also maybe compared to doing some stuff in the main cities like Wellington, just to give sort of a brief introduction on yourself and sort of where it all started for you and kind of how you got to where you are today.
So it's been a bit of a journey. So I was an early school leaver, and I was looking for some work, and my dad was in the construction industry. He was a carpenter, and my grandfather was the carpentry polytech tutor. So between them, I sort of got various jobs starting off in the industry. I didn't actually want to go into construction, but sort of limited myself by leaving school early. And then I found myself sort of doing an apprenticeship and working through residential construction for a period of time. I migrated when my wife was pregnant with our first kid. I decided I sort of needed to challenge myself a little bit more and progress through some roles. So I transitioned into commercial and spent a little bit of time as a leading hand, and then went into a site manager role. That sort of period of time we hit there was a bit of a downturn, and I sort of got boxed into transitioning into quantity surveying, sort of like an option. I'd never heard about it, or I didn't know what it sort of entailed, but so ended up in that role for a period of time and did some estimating. Another bit of a construction downturn, and I went and worked for council as a building officer, processing building consents for a period of time. And then after that, I got poached to work for they set up a new unit to look after land development, new subdivisions and that type of stuff. And so I transitioned into that role, stayed there for a period of time, and advanced to a senior sort of development engineer, and then left there for a better part of 4 years as a project manager. There's a bit of a brief summary of things, and currently I'm manager of the land development department for Manawatu District Council, and look after all the sort of subdivisions, and I can drill down into sort of probably some of the detail of each of the roles. I think particularly relevant would be the project manager role. Most people will have a general idea of what a construction project manager does, but basically you're there from inception of the project, and including having some input into potentially the pricing of the project, and then all the relevant trades that will be involved in the project, and then planning how the construction will commence, important stages, critical points of the project that need to be achieved. You provide quite a bit of contractual input in terms of financial sort of input as well into the project. And then you have a sort of daily input into how the construction proceeds on site, and you have a lot of engagement with external stakeholders, council, consultants, all your sub-trades.
I think it would be quite beneficial to know, the exact differences between these things, and sort of what skills maybe if someone's a site manager sitting there, what skills might I need to be a project manager one day, or what skills might I need to start learning to be a development manager one day? What drew you to project management?
I think I was pushed into it when I site managed some projects, and I was fortunate enough to be sort of mentored by some really capable senior project managers. They sort of helped me along, evolve, and they just kept giving me more complex and complicated projects. And so by default, I sort of ended up into that particular lane. And as I moved organizations, sort of once you've done one project as a project manager, an organisation sees you capable of doing more projects at that scale, and so they'll sort of continue to give you projects, and you'll just operate.
In your opinion, do you think a key for a project manager to be successful, or somebody, I guess two parts to it, and sort of maybe somebody looking to become a project manager, what skills do you think they would, I guess, need to build on to become a successful project manager?
I think project management's basically problem solving. So you've got to be able to think outside of the square and find a solution to a problem pretty quick. And probably one of the critical things is relationships. So you need to establish critical relationships right at the start. And you also need to understand the brief and what the project is in general is fundamental to being able to deliver the project. And I think knowing your limitations and where there's any gaps. So if there's things that you're not capable of doing or are out of your control, that you seek help, or you map out a plan to problem solve those and find a resolution. Yeah, I think that's probably critical parts of it. Someone who's entering into project management from, say, a site management role, understanding contracts is critical, because more often than not, when you've got conflict with subcontractors or the client, the very first thing you're looking at is the contract to see economic responsibilities or scopes are clarified in there. So there's a few courses you can do to capture those skills. BCITO used to offer construction management type roles. I know UCOL do. I think they give a really good foundation education into what's required. Other means are, depending on whether it's vertical construction or civil construction, you could do a cadetship. A school leaver may be able to approach a larger organisation that offers cadetships, and that would be a pathway through to a project manager role.
Oh, cool. I think that's super beneficial to understand sort of that side, what a project manager does. And yeah, what does a typical day look like for you as a project manager?
There's a good analogy was you've got all these scrub fires burning, and you've got a jug of water, and you can only put some of them out or put a little bit on each of them, but they're still simmering away. So yeah, a typical day, it can range, because it's so variable depending on the scale and what type of project management. But obviously the program's a critical thing that you're looking at daily. So you're mapping your project against the program, and you're checking that your resources turn up to site, they're available, they're performing, and also that your outcomes that you're achieving are based on the scope of work and the contract. So yeah, each day you're in the modern era, you're bogged down by emails. That's probably something that everyone has done. And you may be meeting with irrelevant parts of the team or consultants to discuss problems and that type of thing. Yeah, it's each day just sort of evolves as the day moves on.
What might be one of the challenges sort of working in that project manager space that you've come across in your career? One typical challenge that maybe pops up from time to time?
I think a consistent theme is responsibility. Like people not taking responsibility for their problems and trying to pass on their problems. That's quite common. Yeah, probably another problem is generally economics of projects. You can quite often, people make mistakes and they don't allow for things when they price a project, and then you've got to find some way to enable them to continue, not go broke, and then still get what you want. So that's another common problem in the industry. But I think that people taking responsibility for their portfolio work seems to be a consistent theme I've seen as problematic.
So trying to shine a light on that problem, potentially I don't know, in your opinion, is there a golden stamp to how you solve that problem?
I think as you get older and you evolve in the industry, you tend to develop your own conflict resolution skill set, and they might work for some people but not others. But I think just obviously listening is critical. So you make sure that you listen to what is being said, you absorb it. You don't have to make a decision straight away. You can take 5 or whatever and come back and have a really good analytical sort of assessment of what the problem is. Yeah, probably no golden stamp that I've come across yet. If you know one, let me know, and I'll put it in my arsenal.
We kind of briefly touched on the skills for project manager. As you're in a development manager role at the moment, are you able to chat through maybe some of the skills that you use in your development manager role, sort of what are different to a project manager might be doing?
Yeah, so what I currently do is I'm land development manager for a local council, and basically we're part of the infrastructure unit. So we are responsible for the construction monitoring of civil projects, roading, 3 waters. We also review and approve all the engineering plans that are submitted as part of subdivision consents. We provide all the subdivision and land use consent guidance from an infrastructure component, and we also review and provide advice and guidance for building consents from an infrastructure component. I help part of the strategic planning in terms of infrastructure and land development to make sure that we are incorporating infrastructure provisions and structure plans and the wider scale development. In our district, we're based in Fielding. We're quite flood prone. There's a bit of a basin. So we also have the flood modelling and flood recommendation portfolio in our team. So we're heavily engaged deciphering, how that impacts the projects, and what project impacts might have if we approve developments in these areas.
With some of the skills you've got as a project manager, do you have some crossover skills to a development manager?
So there's a couple of different types of. I probably should have clarified this at the start. There's development managers, which are construction development managers, and they're similar to a quantity surveyor. So they would generally price the projects. They would be involved in the conceptual design. They would be involved in the lodgement of the consents and setting the budgets. That's probably a broad sort of role for a development manager. Land development managers and land development engineers are solely sort of in that council type portfolio, looking after the subdivision space and all the infrastructure roading components of developments. So yeah, slightly different roles. In terms of transferable skills, so I think for me, just having a broad stroke of construction, the council component, and my land development experience and quantity surveying gave me sort of not only vertical construction, but civil construction experience. And, I was sort of always looking at plans across both of those sort of areas. So that gave me transferable skills that could be applied to the roles, any of those roles. And I think that made it easier for me to transition into the land development for council portfolio. When I was in the building team, I did a diploma for building control survey, and that was just embedded in the legislation. So the Building Act, Building Code, and other pieces of relevant legislation. And that was also very useful for this role, being sort of part regulatory. I think the project manager is you're more singly engaged in a project, where the development manager is you're holistically looking at several projects or a wider portfolio of work, and you probably don't have the from start to completion engagement as you would a project manager. So a project manager will be there from the start to the finish, and basically a construction development manager would price the project, lodge the consents, and then they'd hand the project over to the project manager. There'd be loose engagement where there's discussions. The development manager will also set up contracts, and there'd be some level of minor engagement between the project manager and the development manager throughout the construction, but generally the development manager would walk away after it's been handed over to the project managers. Yeah, so they probably don't see the tangible results as much as what a project manager would.
How did you go from residential project manager to basically civil land development engineer right now? Like because that's a huge difference.
That commercial experience in terms of that project management, we did the civil component of large scale commercial projects as well. So prior to going to council, I already had that project management experience in that space. So I'd worked for for Mainzeal and some other sort of construction companies. Yeah, so as part of that wider portfolio of a project manager, we did do Ohaki, air-based project, did some supermarkets, prisons, and there's a few other projects so your head's buried in the drawings, including all the civil components, so it was quite easy to pick up. The quantity surveying also added like really good skill set because you're drilling into the detail of the projects, a lot more time in the specifications as well. So you're really understanding every single component of construction, underground and vertical. So I think a combination of all those things led to the experience or the position where I am now. I could reference all of that experience and apply it in the current role. Yeah, so it probably wasn't like a direct pathway. It was like an accumulative pathway of all these different pieces of career that I'd had that made it easier for me to work in this environment.
What are the differences? Somebody in the industry coming into the industry looking at, do I go down the residential space or do I go down the commercial space? Sort of what might be some of the differences there that they're gonna see if they say go to be a project manager in a commercial sense or a residential sense?
Yeah, I think probably best to do a bit of time in both because then you've got the variance of skills. In the residential sector, you're working in isolation a lot more, generally smaller teams, and you're probably thinking, given the sort of the type of work you're doing, there's probably a little bit more individual behaviour thinking, and you probably have to be a little bit more resourceful because you've probably got limited materials, you've got limited resources to help, and those type of things. Commercial is generally at scale. You're working alongside a team, and things are probably a little bit more prescriptive in terms of how you construct. The big difference is just the scale of things. If someone's looking at it, depending on the type of career they want, commercial probably offers greater pathways forward just because of the scale. Organisations are generally bigger. They've got robust training plans in place.
Yeah, I think, and it can balance of both. Like the residential stuff, it's a little bit smaller scales, potentially maybe you can kind of understand it or learn from it a little bit quicker, whereas the commercial stuff can be, you might be on a job for a few years and you're still doing groundworks or something.
Yeah. I think when you used to do your apprenticeships and they were hours based, it might have been 10,000 hours, you could be doing residential and you'd get from foundations to roof cladding, so you'd get the variance of every single component. But on a large scale commercial job, you could just be doing formwork for 3 years. And so you could do your however many thousand hours without putting up a frame or pitching a roof or any of those things, and you'd have your trade. Yeah, the modern system of educating the carpenters is shorter, but it probably offers more variance. And I think if you're going to do a carpentry apprenticeship, even if you're doing commercial, you're still covering some of that residential component as part of your education.
I was just thinking potentially we could just touch on some sort of, I don't know, positive moments that you've had in your career. Like you've spanned quite a lot in your career so far. Sort of what is one moment that stands out that has made you proud or one that you remember?
I think the plaza development was a cool project, just given my age and where I was in terms of I was evolving as a construction professional, and the scale of it was intense. And I really felt like I'd developed as a construction professional. There were some challenges on the project because I was quite a bit younger and all the guys on your team are older and more experienced and knowledgeable. So you sort of have to fake a little bit till you make it. But there was quite a bit of bullying throughout sort of those stages, and you had to come to terms with just setting goals, ignoring all the crap in the background, and just progressing through and still delivering your portfolio work, and navigating that stuff, which was a little bit challenging when you're a bit younger, but all builds the resilience to where you end up.
How do you get through that?
I think that particular, I didn't really have a plan, or I didn't map it out. It was, when you're in it, it's quite difficult, particularly when you're younger, to deal with it. So I think I just ignored it and just focused on what expectations I'd set of myself, and mainly I was just trying to earn the respect of the people that I sort of saw as professionals, and that inspired me. So yeah, I just focused on that, and I didn't take it home. So I think that was critical. A lot of people take it really, really personally and take it home. I think it's just set goals, focus points, and then you could focus on that and work through it.
How this could be a tricky question, but how, looking back on that, how might you would have liked that to be different, to potentially grow yourself in that situation? Like, what would have you wanted from those people in those roles at that time?
Yeah. I've often reflected on that. And it was a different time in the industry, so it was an accepted mode of operation. The same modern lens was applied. So many people would have got the sack. Yeah, I think probably, I don't know if I would have done it any differently, to be honest. Yeah, I probably, yeah, I think I handled it well, and I'd maybe just probably wouldn't have put myself in as many positions, compromised positions as I did, to allow it to happen. But I don't think I did anything that was wrong, with a reflective lens on it now.
And any experiences so far that remind you of why you got into construction? Sort of any times you're like, okay, this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing this. Sort of, can you chat through maybe one or two experiences that kind of give you that feeling?
Yeah, I think one cool experience was delivered some projects in Otaki, and they were quite challenging due to a number of reasons. I met with the tenant, or multiple tenants that were moving in, and one particular tenant, he was so grateful, and then he asked me to come back the next day, and he brought his whole family through, and just seeing the pride in his face and his family's face that he was moving into this new unit was, it was quite empowering. Actually, I felt really proud of the team, of the quality of work that they've done, and we delivered under some pretty challenging circumstances, and to see his appreciation really helped. I guess another significant moment for me was when someone asked me to mentor them, and I'd sort of had a couple of little headbutting sessions with this particular person in a professional manner. And then, so when they approached me to catch up and have some sort of mentoring outside of work, I sort of thought, okay, maybe I'm doing things right. And that was quite empowering. And I guess probably another one, I was in my early 30s, and there was a meeting, and there was these guys that I highly respected. They were incredible mentors and professionals, and they asked me for my advice, and then I thought, actually, yep, I'm there now. That's cool. I'm actually at a good level. They've asked me. I've been waiting for this moment, and it's finally come. So, and I can't even remember what I said, but I was just, I could feel myself getting all hot. I was like,
Yeah.
this is it. Yeah. So that was cool.
We touched on your work in the regions, but also I know you've done some work in Wellington and in the main cities. Are you able to maybe just talk through sort of some of the differences in the regions to working in, say, a main city?
Yeah, I think some of the smaller regions are quite cliquey, and it's difficult to break in as an outsider. In the Wellington region, it's actually quite commercial, and there's quite an extensive amount of organisations and sub-trades, so they act quite commercially, sort of like a bit of a metro operation. It's quite easy to navigate the relationships and build relationships because they're used to working with a lot of different people. In the smaller regions, people are a bit more resistant to build some of the relationships, particularly if they see you as an outsider coming in. And there can be a lot of regional loyalty, or so they can see someone moving into the region as having an impact, a negative impact on the region.
It's kind of a good segue, but yeah, how do you find and build those relationships within the business that you're in? Like, yeah, like what do you seek out when finding a new relationship or building a new relationship with somebody?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I was sort of thinking about that today, actually. It's how you approach people. It's critical that you engage with people on multiple levels and put yourself out there as well. I mean, just try. I think try is, if you don't put yourself out there or try, you're not going to make any connections. But there are quite a few organisations that make it easier to connect. You could seek out some of those local organisations. There's like master builders, certified builders. There are sort of construction forums and those type of things that you could look at exploring before you do move. And then the suppliers are also a good way to network with people. They'll have key contacts. They often have trade breakfasts and stuff like that, which is a really good opportunity to sort of meet with others that are in the industry and that type of thing. For me, I've always tried to maintain the relationships, even if it's been an employer that I've left or whatever. I've tried to maintain a positive relationship with them, because it's such a small country. At some stage you're going to come across people, so it's important to not burn any bridges if you can help it.
Daniel, I don't know, yeah, this is a good one, but what are your dreams for the industry? What do you want to see happen?
Yeah, I'm quite keen on this AI innovation and the direction that's going in, and I think there's some really good areas of construction that this would make significant improvements in terms of health and safety, particularly like working at heights or the really high critical risk areas of construction. That AI innovation may help save lives or whatever, and also make work easier, safer, and potentially quality could be better. Mainly around that working from heights. So I'm quite excited to see where the AI space evolves in terms of construction. I just hope it maintains the human element and it doesn't replace the human element. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of the younger guys come through and where they're going to take things. They've had a different education and experience to us, and probably a lot more of a positive entry into the trade. So that's going to be quite exciting to see what these guys do and where they take the industry. So yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to as well.
Cool. And kind of sort of touched on it there, but what would make this a better place for everybody to work in?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be a challenging industry because it's a lot of strong personalities operate in construction. I just hope we maintain and evolve better in terms of collaborative workspaces and not sort of like dictatorships. So I'm really hoping some of those barriers in terms of structure and that type of thing are broken down a little bit. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, is there anything else you wanted to chat through?
Yeah, I think stress is probably something that it's quite a significant part of work for everyone, and I've had a bit of work stress as everyone has, and just coping mechanisms for stress. I think it's important that as soon as you start to experience some high level of stress, that you work through some method of dealing with it, and you don't let it get on top of you, because it is a challenging industry, and you're at work a really long period of time during the week, and particularly guys tend to bottle it up and not talk about it, or don't want to deal with it. So I think it's important as soon as you identify stress that you either talk to someone about it, or you find a method of dealing with it. I don't talk about it, so I generally bottle it up, but I've found for me one of the methods that I use to work, so I'm not staying the method I use that works for me is so I'm not staying awake all night stressing, is I've got a stress diary. So I force myself to stress during the day, and I write down what's stressing me out, what's the worst that can happen, and how can I solve it. And if I can't solve it, I map out, or I write down a way, or what I need to do to make the problem go away. And that forces my brain to process it during the day and not at night. It works, 90% of the time, but not always. But I think it's good to force yourself to try and deal with those stressful situations during the day. So I think just critical you find some method of dealing with stress, or you're communicating with someone to deal with it.
You mentioned like how stress pops up. How do you know when it's coming to you?
I think it's normally those shit moments where you can feel the blood rush to your head, or your heart's palpitating, or it catches your breath, or something like that. That's stress, and that's when you need to deal with it. And I mean, people have a lot of shit going on in their life as well. You don't. So quite often you can have all these other things going on in your life as well, and so you're 80% focused at work, you're 20% focused on this other stuff, and some days everything's going wrong. So you as soon as you feel like, man, this is getting a bit out of control, or your heart's beating, or you feel a bit dizzy or whatever, that's the point. Yeah, it's got serious. Now I need to act on it. Or you could find that you're snapping at people, or something like that. And I've always tried not to take it home. And if you find you're acting slightly differently, that could be an indicator of stress as well.
Yeah, you mentioned trying not to take it home. I spoke to a guy from Live Well, Build Well a couple of days ago, and his episode's coming out tomorrow morning actually. And yeah, he said sort of switching off at the end of the day, can be super helpful for just that time to decompress your brain, turn it off, and then you're a new person, or not a new person, but you're the same person that left home when you come back. Like, do you have any tips on how you sort of decompress at the end of the day to walk in the door happy, Daniel?
It's not quite always that easy, and it is going to be rolling away in the back of your head. But I've been fortunate enough that I've got a little bit of a distance to drive to and fro work, so I might listen to a podcast or something like that. But I think for me, forcing myself to stress about it during the day sort of helps me not bring it home, because in some way I've found some resolution to what's stressing me, even if it's not resolved the problem. There's a mechanism to deal with it, or to get rid of it. So I think that for me has been more useful, and it's still going to weigh on your mind a little bit, but you've 90% sort of removed it out of the way. Yeah, I think probably the key takeaway really is just making sure that you see what stress is for you and you deal with it, and don't let it get away on you, because it's not good for you or your family or your work as well. And you just really got to understand what stress is, and when it's happening, and how to deal with it.
Sounds like you've had this great little insight. Like, is this a recent insight, or have you kind of been doing this for a long period of your career so far?
I've always sort of been able to cope with stress, and then I got COVID, and it just sort of threw me, and I went through this period of time where I didn't sleep for about 6 weeks. And then off the back of that, everything was stressing me out. Like, I had insomnia, and little things at work would stress me out. So it sort of got to the point where I felt like I wasn't able to cope with things. And then, so as soon as that happened, luckily my wife, she noticed that I was acting slightly different, and then I thought, so I'm not going to let this control me. I'm going to have to find some way that works. And so I tried lots of different methods of read a lot of things. There's a lot of useful and useless information available, but in the end, for me, I just developed my own method. And I think that stress diary, because I was continually looking at the things that were stressing me out, and I just couldn't see a pathway forward. And I thought, I've got to solve them. And then and that was part of that project management sort of skill set. You got to find a solution to it and have an outcome. And so I just applied those type of principles to the stress, and that helped me deal with it. And I've continued that model over the last few years, and it seems to be working for me. But yeah, I think it's just different things are going to work for different people, and if that works for someone, it's good. If not, find another method that really helps.
Any final thoughts from you?
I think for the young guys coming through, try and find a good mentor, because you're in the industry for a long time if you choose to be. And if you find some mentors that inspire you, it really helps you progress. And there are good mentors out there that are willing to put their time in people coming through. And if you do find a good mentor, just make sure you absorb everything that they're offering you, and then you take that and apply that to someone they're coming through, pay it back type thing.
That's it for today's episode of Constructing Mindsets. Remember, every conversation is a chance to shift the culture of construction. Reviews are always appreciated. Until next time, take care and keep showing up with good energy.